agree with you in relation to the digital green certificate. I think that would be a step forward. At IATA, we have argued that there should be a common standard so that airlines and governments can fully satisfy themselves that people traveling meet the criteria, and where somebody has been vaccinated, that they can provide evidence of that vaccination. Because regardless of what we might think as to whether vaccination should be a requirement for travel, there will be some countries around the world where they will make it a condition of entry into the country. And we've already heard a number of countries say that that's likely to be the case. So having a robust, verifiable system that can be checked and satisfied is very important. On EU restrictions, I've described the arrangements in Ireland to be repressive. I think I've heard people sort of almost cheer at the fact that Ireland has the most restrictive arrangements, as if that's something good. I don't see it that way. I think this is particularly dangerous for a country like Ireland, where the message being sent is that we don't want people travelling to the country. And for a country that's always been open, dependent on immigration, dependent on foreign investment, I think the message that's been sent out around the world is particularly worrying. Other EU countries don't have similar restrictions. So I'm living in Switzerland now, not an EU country, but I've travelled into Spain without any restriction. You have to do in the case of Spain, actually, an antigen test before you travel. In the case of coming back into Switzerland, you need to have a PCR test. I've travelled to the UK, where there's more restrictive arrangements in place. PCR test is required or an antigen test, but you can then self-isolate. So there isn't a common standard. And even if you look at requirements for PCR, some countries require it to be taken within 24 hours of travel, some 48 and some 72. So you would think that the EU should be able to align on a simple issue like that. If it's okay for many countries to accept one that's been taken within 72 hours, why isn't it acceptable for all? Some require it to be taken by everybody, including newborn children. Others, like Ireland, I think it's children above the age of 6. In some cases, it's people above the age of 18. So there isn't a common standard being applied across the EU. And some countries are more open than others. But in the main, some element of restriction is in place. On Aer Lingus, I think it's very regrettable that Aer Lingus has had to take the decisions that it has. But you've got to remember, Aer Lingus is not flying on the transatlantic. And the transatlantic operation from Shannon is particularly seasonal. It's always been heavily dependent on US inbound traffic, and particularly so during the summer season. Now, this summer season is wiped out. Which is the second summer in a row that Aer Lingus will not be able to bring people from the US into Ireland. And while Irish citizens are restricted in terms of entry into the US at the moment under federal law, there's no restriction on US citizens traveling out of the US or indeed back into the US. So it's deeply regrettable that Aer Lingus has to take this decision. But I don't see any way of avoiding it because it is in a deep financial crisis. And while you're right in saying that Aer Lingus has accessed a loan from ISEF, that is a loan that has to be repaid. So the damage that has been done to airlines through this crisis is huge in relation to the additional debt burden that has been taken on. And that debt has to be repaid. And that will impose significant restrictions on how airlines operate. And I think it will be particularly true in terms of the risk appetite that they have for financial risk, which will seriously restrict the level of capacity that comes back into the market once travel restrictions are removed. And I don't see, and I've no inside knowledge in terms of how Aer Lingus is thinking, but I don't see how it will be possible for Aer Lingus to recreate the transatlantic network that it operated in 2019 once things get going. I think it's going to take many, many years to see the transatlantic network being built up again. And on relation to Shannon slots, all I can tell you is that, I've always said that people didn't have anything to fear because based on all of the knowledge I had, and again, I don't have any inside knowledge as to how things are operating at the moment, but while I was at Aer Lingus and at IAG, those routes were operated on a profitable basis. So people should have nothing to fear. If the demand is there, I guarantee you Aer Lingus will want to serve it. They always have, and I believe they always will. And people shouldn't be concerned about the continuity of that service, provided the government removes restrictions. If you continue to have travel restrictions, well, then it's inevitable that these routes cannot be operated.